Now we are going to see another very interesting topic, which is very much important in peer review. That is audit program. It's a checklist that every practicing unit should have. So we are going to see the importance of audit program, and this will be useful even to your private practice also. Because if you maintain the audit program like this, then you will be the winner of the practice. The first point is check whether the pre-audit minutes are available for commencing the audit. So it is a duty of the peer reviewer to see that whether the practicing unit has got pre-audit minutes, and that has been entered between the practicing unit and the client. Then before commencement of the audit, then the client has to give the appointment letter. So for that, whether the appointment letter has been received by the practicing unit, it is a duty of the peer reviewer. Once again, he has to verify all this. So he has to see the appointment letter and what are the relevant resolution for the appointment. If it's a limited company, then the company has to pass a resolution for the appointment of the auditor, and check what are the terms and conditions that are there in the appointment letter. So it's the duty of the peer reviewer to go through the terms and conditions and the manner in which they fix the audit fees. That is also has to be seen by the peer reviewer. So pre-audit minutes, then whether the appointment letter has been received, what about the fees and what are the terms and conditions that has to be checked by the peer reviewer. Then in case of the company, if the audit is first audit, that is first time he has been appointed as the company auditor, then the practicing unit, whether it has filed the ADT1 before OC, and if it is a continuous one, then that is if the file is being taken over from another auditor, then the practice unit has to get the no objection certificate from the predecessor auditor. And assessing audit risk by using professional judgment and audit procedures to reduce at an acceptable low level. That is the practicing unit's policy to assess the audit risk. To what extent the audit risk will be there, and whether the practicing unit has applied its professional judgment so that the risk of doing the audit is at the low level. And next thing is check whether all the relevant information like organizational hierarchy and permanent documents like articles of association and memorandum of association of the client are gathered for understanding. But this is directly related to the nature of the business of the entity. Then internal control system, including the order and manager control. So all this have to be checked by the peer reviewer. These are preliminary review procedures that the peer reviewer has to conduct before commencing their work. Then technique of identification of materiality of the work and see the logical behind the identification of the materiality. This is a very, very important thing. So what is material in the audit? That has to be assessed by the practicing unit first. Whether the same has been assessed by the practicing unit and whether it has been in conformity with the audit program, and everything has to be reviewed by the peer reviewer. Then what is the logic based on which the practicing unit, they are identifying the materiality of the work? So that has to be viewed by the reviewer. So this is another checkpoint. Then next checkpoint that our reviewer has to see is that check whether preliminary analysis of checklist is available for a small company. That is preliminary. So checklist is available separately for small companies, CSR, internal audit, then IFSC, then CARO for the client. So for each and everything, there should be a checklist. This has to be viewed by the reviewer, and whether a proper audit team is being deployed based on the nature of the work and risk involved in the assignment. So how the practicing unit, they are selecting the audit team and how they are allotting this work, everything has to be reviewed by the peer reviewer. Next points are check whether overall strategy, audit strategy and plan for carrying out the audit are well documented and communicated among the audit team. So here the strategy is there, plan is there, and both the things have to be communicated to the audit team. And to communicate the same, both the things have to be properly documented. Whether the same is there or not, that has to be reviewed by the peer reviewer. Then what are the new audit assignments accepted during the year? That is audit assignments accepted for the client during the year. then for that, what are the procedures have been carried out, whether the same has been informed to the predecessor auditor, or whether the engagement letter is being, that is appointment letter has been received or not. Everything has to be reviewed by the peer reviewer. Then practicing unit procedures to continue the clients for a long time. Next one is the retention of the client. What are the steps that the practicing unit has taken? All these steps have to be reviewed by the peer reviewer. That is to retain the customer for a long-term customer retention. This is what is a policy, and how they are retaining it, that the peer reviewer has to see. Next thing is ensure the terms of agreement have been agreed in writing and the same is in line with standards on account. What is the terms of appointment? Everything should be in writing and that should be in line with the standards on auditing. So the peer reviewer has to view whether it has to go through all the terms of agreement, and all the terms of agreement should be in writing and that should be in line with standards on auditing. Next one is assessing the competency team before going with the assignment. So the practicing unit should have got a policy, and the practicing unit has to prove that the following personnel, that is the engagement partner or the partner in charge who is going to do the peer review, has got the stuff or not. And all the staff who are assisting the peer reviewer are having competent. And all the staff who are doing the audit work of the practicing unit are also should be competent. So here the peer reviewer has to see whether the auditing team, that is whether the team who are going to do the audit for the client has got the competency or not. Next one is ensure the quality control procedures that are applicable to the audit engagement or complied with. It is normal thing. Quality control procedures who are going to follow and who is in charge, and is there any quality control manual or not. Everything has to be reviewed by the peer reviewer. Another checkpoint with reference to preliminary review procedure is reviewer has to confirm whether the practicing unit has considered P&L account, balance sheet, auditor's report, director's report of the previous year. So that means it's a clear indication that the practice unit has to consider the P&L account, balance sheet, auditor's report, and director's report of the previous year, as well as the internal audit report while doing the audit. So even when you're going for the bank audit also, you have to do this work. So you have to consider the previous auditor's report. Is there any comment that has been given by the previous auditor or not? And next one is check whether the fundamental accounting assumptions, what is it? That is consistency concept, going concern concept, accrual basis concept have been properly followed by the client. And whether the practice unit has taken care for that point in preparation and presentation of the financial statements. So this is the reviewer has to see that this, and everything has to be properly documented by the practicing unit. Next one is review whether items of significant importance have been properly checked by the audit team members depending on the constitution of the client. So what is important, and those have to be properly checked, and those have to be checked by the auditing members, and it depends on the constitution of the members, constitution of the client. What are the important things that auditing team has to check is, in case of a company, the practice unit has to check and get the working papers or documentation with reference to shareholding pattern, and if the company has issued any fresh share issue, and whether the practicing unit has seen that the documents have been filed before ROC and board of minutes and secretary records. Everything have to be verified by the practicing unit, and the reviewer has to see whether these have been taken care of by the practicing unit, and verify the shareholders agreement and verification of MCA records online by the auditor. So the auditor, he cannot simply sign the balance sheet or anything, or he cannot simply sign the director's appointment. The auditor has to take the printout or has to take the link from the MCA records with reference to all his documentation. So this is one of the duties of the reviewer. He has to see whether the practicing unit has verified these things or not. In case of LLP or partnership firm, what is the profit sharing ratio that is clearly stated in the practice in the partnership deed? But even the reviewer has to see whether the partnership, whether the partnership deed in record, a partnership deed has been registered before the register of firms, and whether the same has been renewed it on time, whether all the partners they have executed the partnership deed, and what about the profit sharing ratio, what about the capital, everything has to be seen by the practicing unit, and the reviewer has to see whether the practicing unit has seen everything, all these points. And with reference to LLB, who is the signatory person and who is the designated person, designated person from the records. That point also he has to see. So all other provisions of LLP are applicable. And check whether journal entries testing checklist is prepared to ensure that the risk of fraud or misstatement through posting of journal entries is addressed. So this is another thing. Practicing unit has to see the journal entries, whether those journal entries are lead to any fraud. To avoid fraud, whether they pass any journal entries. What are the steps that the practicing unit has taken, and whether the same has been properly documented, and everything has to be reviewed by the peer reviewer, whether the practicing unit has got the has taken enough steps. And next one is performance of analytical review procedures, substantive test of details to obtain sufficient, relevant, and reliable audit evidence for each audit objective. So it is nothing but the practicing unit should get all the materials in hand, and all the materials should be reliable one and relevant one related to the audit. And for each and every unit, whether the practice unit has got all these details, again the peer reviewer has to check each and everything. And the peer reviewer has to check whether the unit has actually got the audit program checklist or not. What is there in the audit checklist that we are discussing it, and really whether the unit has got the audit program checklist or not, that has to be verified or reviewed by the peer reviewer. And what about the discussion between inter-team? So for that also the practice unit has to prepare a checklist, whether the same has been recorded properly, documented properly. Is there any checklist for that? Everything has to be reviewed by the peer reviewer. And is checklist available for statutory audit and accounting standards which have been prepared to comply with the applicable accounting standards? That is the statutory audit. To the statutory audit, what about the checklist? How to verify the accounting standards? For that also there should be a checklist. All the things have been related to the accounting standards. So all this, the charter of the peer reviewer has to do it. And my kind information to you is that you should know what is accounting standard, what is auditing standard, everything you should know. So first thing, you have to be a master in AS, and in AS you have to attend. There are special courses available at ICI, you have to attend to it. Then CARO checklist and GST checklist. So that means you have to prepare a CARO checklist and GST checklist, and you have to see, that is a practice unit has to see whether all are related to the legal and regulatory requirements. And if there is any change in the accounting policy, yes, that has also to be properly documented. And in case if it's a material in nature, that is change, whether that is change from cash system to mercantile system, everything have to be properly recorded. And if it is a material effect, if the company has got the material effect, whether the same has been taken care of by the practice unit, and then it is the duty of the reviewer to see that the practice unit has taken enough step to disclose the change in the accounting policy. And documents and communications carried out with management and audit team when major issues and discussion that took place. So if there is any major issue or if there is any deep discussion, and everything has to be properly documented and everything has to be properly communicated to the management as well as to the audit team. Whether there are sufficient records are available or not, that has also to be reviewed by the peer reviewer. And now we are going for the audit planning. What is the audit planning? Now they say that is management team of practicing units. So they say that the personnel who are going to do the who are going to do the audit of the practice unit had contact with entities, especially with those charged with governance. That is, the audit should be carried out on the governance, proper governance. Whether practice unit has followed the following procedures diligently, they say that develop audit strategy to consider scope of engagement, consider business and regulatory environment of operation of business entity, and specific issues on the work of internal audit, and preliminary setting of materiality levels, preliminary review of risk, including fraud risk. So it is very, very simple. The practicing unit has to see that all the procedures of which have been carried out by the unit client have been done properly. For that, there should be a sufficient audit program should be there, and even it is an indirect indication that it is a responsibility of the practicing unit to assess is there any fraud risk related to the fraud is there or not. That has to be assessed by the practice unit, and as a reviewer, the reviewer has to see whether the practicing unit has taken or has given enough importance for this point. And next is to reduce the audit risk to an acceptable level. That is, practicing unit has to plan the nature, timing, and extent of audit procedures. So to reduce the audit risk, what the practice unit has to see, the practice unit has to plan the nature of the business that the client is doing. And what about the timing? Timing means data commencement, data closing, everything has to be properly planned. And extent of audit procedure, to what extent that practice unit has to carry out the audit, that has to be clearly mentioned in the audit program. So this has to be reviewed by the reviewer. And what is the nature of tests that have been adopted by the practicing unit, and the procedures to be conducted at the association level, and tailoring of audit program. Tailoring of audit program means some alteration should be there, and whether the same thing is being modified according to the needs. Then after that, after seeing that, then after seeing audit plan, then only the reports have to be signed. Next one is performance of the practicing unit. What are the important points that you have to see with reference to performance is whether the work has been carried out according to the plan. So that means it's a clear indication that the practicing unit should have the plan, audit plan. And for that, there should be a proper checklist. The partner in charge guided the team as per the requirement. So that means it's a clear indication that the partner who is going to manage the practicing unit should have got enough knowledge, and he should be in a position to guide the entire unit in the right direction. Next one is timely review of procedures to be completed. So initially you are preparing the procedures, and it should be reviewed regularly by the practicing unit according to the changes, according to the latest amendments. And if that is every, each and every time whenever the amendments are come, the procedures have to be followed, have to be changed. And if there is any modification in the planned approach, that has also to be seen, that has also to be verified by the practicing unit, and the manager and the person who is in charge of the practicing unit, he has to take care of that. Then identify those areas which require consultation and how the practicing unit approaches. And sometimes the practicing unit has not got the sufficient knowledge. Say take an outsourcing person, so they have to consult the other person, and how to approach that other person, how to get how to get the work from the consultant. Everything has to be properly documented, and everything has to be clearly recorded by the practicing unit, and it's a duty of the reviewer to see whether those things have been verified. Then now coming to the senior review checklist. What's the senior review? That is the topmost importance of the checklist is that is working papers, maintenance of working papers. The maintenance, that is working papers, should got all the evidences, and the working papers should be managed in such a manner that cross-reference details can also be seen or can also be taken from the working papers. Then summary of work done, problems, important judgments, and audit conclusion. Summary of the work done by the audit staff. They have to summarize everything. And what are the problems that the audit staff they faced during the audit? And for that, the practicing unit has to rely on some judgment. What are the important judgment? Based on that, the practicing unit has taken the decision. And based on this and everything, what about the audit conclusion? That has to be properly documented. It is a duty of the reviewer to see all this, that is work done, problems faced by the practicing unit, what are the important judgments based on which the practicing unit has relied, and what about the audit conclusion. Then review carried out by the senior with reference to work of all assistants, audit program followed, and work performed as per the time schedule. So the seniors, that is a person who is in charge of the practice unit, has to see that the work has been carried out as per the audit program, and he has to analyze the work done by all his assistants. And what about the audit program, and whether those audit programs that have been formulated by the practice unit have been followed by the practice unit correctly or not, and what about the working performed as per the time schedule. For each and every work, that's a time schedule, whether the practice unit has followed the time schedule or not. And update audit working papers, including permanent records. Another thing is update all working papers. That means you have done initially one set of working, then after that you are further going on doing the audit, and you have to update all the working papers. And after that, you have to see whether the permanent records are there, and even those permanent records have also to be updated. That is also another important thing. And whether the audit manager in charge reviewed the checklist regularly. So there is another clear indication that the checklists have to be reviewed regularly. That means if there is any change in the checklist, that has to be followed, and it is the auditor managers in charge to check the checklist regularly, and compare the budget time with the actuals, and analyze the reasons for major variation. That means there is a projected budget line to do the audit, and what about the actual time that they have taken, you have to compare it, and if there is any major reasons, then the practicing unit has to record those reasons, and as a reviewer, the reviewer has to see all these points also. That is the difference between budgeted time with the actual. Then review of unadjusted errors to determine whether individual and aggregate effect is material. That is, there will be some errors, but all errors may be adjusted, and there will be some errors which cannot be adjusted. What are all those unadjusted errors, and whether it has got the effect on the audit or not, that has to be properly recorded by the practice unit. As a reviewer, you have to see that point also. And balance in draft financials tallied with the working papers required. So what about the financials, and whether all those financials have got the proper working papers? So this also have to be reviewed by the reviewer, and review draft financials and ensure that it is as per accounting principles. So before signing it, the practicing unit has to prepare the draft financials, and whether the practicing unit has seen that all those draft financials are in agreement with the accounting principles. Next one is formulation of draft audit opinion and audit report. So just like audit financials, the practice unit has to prepare the audit opinion, that is has to prepare a draft audit opinion and audit report before reviewing the final report. And significant events occurred after the data balance. This is a very, very important. Suppose you are doing the audit for the balance sheet, and if there is any significant event that has occurred after the data balance, even this is applicable for the NPA also. Sometimes an account will become NPA as on the balance sheet date, but sometimes the payment will be made by the that is a client after the balance sheet date, so that they can regularize the payments. Few banks, they say that if the payments have been regularized and updated, they will not create that account as NPA. The same is the concept, whether the same is being disclosed in the financial statements or in the audit report. So it is a duty of the practicing unit to see that if there is any material change or significant change that has taken place after the data balance sheet, whether the same is being disclosed in the financial statements or in the audit report. So the reviewer has also to see this. Then final deliverable checkpoint is prepared by the audit manager and approval of the same by the audit partner in charge. So after preparing everything, final checklist has to be prepared by the audit manager, and that has to be verified by the auditor partner who is in charge. That means the work is being divided into two. So checklist is there, then final after considering everything, then the audit manager prepares the final deliverable checklist. That is this is the final thing based on which we have done the audit, and same thing has to be approved by the audit partner. And what about the planning for the next year's audit? That also should be there in the checklist. Partner review details. Check whether all the documents and working papers are available and stored properly. So in detail. So the partner, this is duty of the partner. He has to see whether all the working papers are there, whether all documents have been obtained, and whether or whether the same is linked to the financials, or whether everything is being tallied, and that has to be stored appropriately. Okay, next one is after doing everything, final clearance obtained from the independent reviewer for task completion. That is, after completing the work, then it is the duty of the practice unit to get the independent review, and before giving the amount before giving the tax challan. So then check the final deliverable checklist. That is in the previous thing. It has to be prepared by the audit team manager, and that has to be given to the manager in charge, audit manager in charge. Then audit manager, he has to prepare the final deliverable list. Then they have to have discussion with the management, and only after having a discussion with the management, then only after getting the things settled, he can sign the audit report. And review of final audit files. That is, when everything is over, he can review the final audit files and items which require partners' attention and whether the same is considered before closure. So what are the things? So sometimes some matters are very much important. So that has also to be recorded, and whether the same is being considered before closure. That is, they have to settle the issue. So suppose if anything is important, if that has to be brought to the knowledge of the partner who is in charge of the audit, and whether the same has been considered by the practicing unit or not. And sometimes the unadjusted errors, how to rectify it, and all the unadjusted errors should be recorded and reported in the reports. And sometimes the lead schedules and the audit conclusions of each material area. So for each and every area, the auditors, they have to take the decision. That is, the practice unit, they have to take the decision, and they have to take the decision by giving more detailed review in case if there is any specific areas. So say, for example, in case of marketing, they have to give you a specific report, how they approach the market and how they create the demand, how they sold everything. So that is the thing that they have to take. Though the points are only in line, single line, for each and everything, the practicing unit has to see what has happened in the client's file, and that has to be properly documented at the practicing unit. Sign the memorandum of changes. Suppose in case if there is any change in the classification of the head, that has to be verified by the practice unit and sign those MOC and audit adjustments, and those have to be discussed with the client. Only after that the final decisions have to then, if the auditor has given any qualification in its audit report, and everything has to be dealt separately and has to be properly recorded, and everything has to be reported, and for that, whether the practice unit has got the proper document or not, that has also to be seen by the reviewer. And after that, after closing get the closing trial balance signed by the customer, because the reviewer has to give, that is, the practice unit has to give in its report that whether the financial statements are in agreement with the books of account. Then the practice unit has to say yes, it is in agreement of the books of account. For that, they have to obtain the signed trial balance. When those signature has to be done by the appropriate authority of the client, and it has to be properly documented by the practice unit. This is a very audit program checklist. This has to be followed by each practicing unit. As a reviewer, he has to see all those points in detail. Though I've given only the audit qualification, what are the audit qualifications the practicing unit, that is the practicing unit has given, have to be verified by the reviewer. This is what I want to say about the audit program checklists which are applicable for the practicing unit. And thanks for watching this program patiently. Nandri, Vanakkam.